Moment of truth. Go ahead. Let it down, let's see what happens here. Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to show you the proper way to build a track bar for your rock crawler, along with putting in coilover mounts on a stinking unibody. Now this is my unicorn truck. Look at how awesome that is. Let's get started. All right, so the first thing we got to do here is start on my unibody stiffeners. And the only way I can do that is by cleaning all of the undercoating off. You ready for me to do a lot of grinding?
Yeah.
Shanna's already seen me do this a bunch of times. She is not a fan. I'm not really a fan either. I've tried heating it up and scraping it, which does help. People always say do dry ice. I guess you could probably do dry ice if you want to spend like $300 or $400 to pull your undercoat off. I'm not gonna do that. That's gotta go.
So it begins again. Yay.
All that hard work to make it look nice. Don't need it covered in poo. There we go. Before I start welding all this unibody stiffener stuff on, one of the things that you probably have noticed is this whole crossbar here was cut out because Vern had a winch in here. And so modifying this for that winch, I'm worried about this unibody doing one of these. And I don't want that to happen. So the way I'm gonna prevent that is actually gonna be a threefold deal because I got the barn steering box brace. Now this is probably one of the easiest steering box braces you can put on, unless you're still running a sway bar. In that case, you do have to punch a couple holes in here for the sway bar bolts. What this is gonna do is not only support this frame from separating out, but it's also gonna beef up the steering box. As most of you know, that's a super weak link on the unibody Jeeps, is the steering box peeling out. And so with this here, that's gonna keep it nice and rigidified. And it even comes with all grade 8 hardware. This is why I shouldn't have rolling things. I play around too much. And before all you keyboard warriors be like, oh, that's a unibody or it's a uniframe or whatever, I'm just gonna call it frame rail because it's a lot easier just to say. But before I bolt these up into the frame rail, they are going up there vertically, which will collect a lot of dust, water, debris, and things like that. So I don't want the threads to get messed up because that's gonna make it really hard to get them out if I ever need to take it apart. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit it with a little anti-seize, and that way I got a little cover your butt on here. Not that I don't always try to cover my butt, but sometimes it makes an appearance.
What's it gonna do? I can see your butt crack. You gotta cover up the crack.
Ta-da. And we got the beef. Yay. This side actually doesn't look too bad. The other side's way worse. That worked. Keep it out of my way. How about them apples? Now I think I've mentioned it, but we are getting rid of coils and going to coilovers. So this thing has got to go. It's also going to make it easier to get to the plating. Time to grind. I used one of these mill scale grinder discs. That actually worked really good. That might be my go-to for getting undercoating off of unibodies. I'll come back in here with a flap disc and really clean it up now. Now we just need to repeat the same steps on the driver's side. The only difference is I got to remove the 3 steering box bolts, but now that we have it supported, it really shouldn't go anywhere. All right, so while I was grinding, Shanna brought this in. So it just showed up, our rear drive shaft from Adam's Drive Shaft. Super stoked on that. That's a big boy drive shaft right there. He talked me into stepping up to 1350 for the rear. So I got a 1350, I got a couple 1350 yokes to put on the T-case and on the rear axle. So. I use the steering box bolts to put it back in, plus a factory bolt here. That way it's held in nice and flush. I can go ahead and start tacking this thing in. Now, one trick I will say when you're welding on unibody stiffeners, number one, you obviously want your metal to be clean as possible. Number two, the 3/16 plate, you want to try to pull from that to the unibody. If you try to pull from the unibody to the plate, you're probably just going to burn holes through the unibody and then not really even connecting to the plate. So if you can pull from the plate, it helps. That's my little unibody welding trick of the day. Don't know if it makes it any better because this sheet metal on this unibody is like kind of poo, but do your best. Doesn't weld amazing, but it welds. Now I just keep welding. All right. That's a lot of welding because every one of these unibodies is a little bit tweaked, a little bit different, especially as old as they are. So you do have to modify these plates just a little bit to make them fit, but it's in, it's done. You could definitely tell where there was like impurities in the unibody steel. We're good. Good enough anyway. So next thing I did is put this Barnes track bar plate on here. And you can see you got 2 bolts here and 2 bolts down here. I'm gonna weld this in, but it is important to have that plate of strength on there because on the other side of that is your motor mount. So 2 things you don't want, and I've had this happen on unibodies. Number 1 is your track bar peeling off the unibody. I've had that happen. Or number 2, it actually breaks the motor mount because the track bar pulls down and then breaks the motor mount. And both times it's because I didn't have enough support on the top or bottom, one place or the other. So with this going all the way down and around, now our motor mount has all the support. So now we'll go ahead and weld that in, and then I'll show you guys how we're gonna set up our track bar mount. So we got our track bar mount welded in top and bottom. Now I want to set my track bar. Now I have my axle set at ride height. So right now the axle is set where the tires would hold it up and the vehicle is sitting right where I want it to be. So this is going to be ride height right here. This is how I'm going to set up my track bar. And all I want to do is match exactly the way that the axle is sitting to that one, and I can look down there and see it. So I'm going to need to notch this part out and then notch this base out a little bit. So you can see I got a gap here and a gap here of about 1/4 inch all the way around. You can see our track bar mount down there. All I'm doing is matching it here, making sure I got room between my steering and my front control arm, knowing that I'm not going to hit my axle tube, and we'll be good. All right, now if you guys watched the last video where I put the track bar mount on the axle, if you remember, I mounted that thing all the way on the other side of this thing because I don't have a coil in the way because we're doing coilovers. The same concept goes for this. Your standard track bar on a Cherokee or even Wranglers goes straight down. The problem with that then is your track bar is shorter, which in turn, as you droop out, the axle is actually going to pull one way or the other depending on which way your track bar is mounted. But it's actually going to pull it off to the side. So instead of keeping it straight, when it droops out, it's going to pull off the side. So the longer your track bar is and the flatter your track bar is, the better chance you have of drooping out and keeping your axle straight on the vehicle. All right, so you can see here, this is completely going to clear this axle tube flexing up and down. Plus it's going to have more than enough clearance from the steering working back and forth. This is basically as deep as it's going to get there. So we have a nice inline point. It's hard to see it there, but it's in line with that track bar over there. So I've taken some blue tape and went from my pitman arm to my steering arm for my drag link. I went to 2 different holes for a track bar design going over to this side. And you can see what looks to match the best, honestly, is the lower end on this one and the second one down on this one. Now using that lower end will actually give us the longest track bar length. Looking at it, might even be able to come to the high hole here. It's gonna be close, but you gotta remember this is gonna be sitting down a little bit. That's gonna be up a little bit. So we might be able to go to the bottom one on that one, the high one on here, and like I said, that's gonna give us the flattest, longest track bar we could have. Your standard track bar mount on a Jeep is way in here, and then over here it's right down here. So it's quite a bit shorter by like, I don't know, at least a foot, if not a foot and a half. So now what we need to do is get our axle centered up. So I don't really know how centered our axle is to the body. I mean, it's close, but we need to get some true measurements. We're gonna true this front axle up poor man style. And we're gonna do it with these. If you guys remember when I built the S10, I actually made my own plumb bobs. No different here. This is just a cheap piece of string and some washers I had laying around. In normal situations, when you're measuring for center, you usually have a track bar that's already made for your rig. And I always tell people to come off of their tire and go right to the post inside the coil, and that's how you can kind of straighten it out. Because I'm still waiting on studs that I ordered over a month ago to go back to 8-lug with this axle, so I can't mount my wheels up. So the way I did this is we got a string line going straight down, we got some weight to it to keep it flush. So I'm measuring from the string line to the center of the ball joint delete stud. We have 7.5 inches. We have 7.5 inches on the other side, which is pretty good. Like I only kicked it like a 1/16 of an inch to get it straightened out, which means I had the axle pretty straight just by eyeballing it. That micrometer was on top of it for this one. All we need to do now is measure our center to center, and we'll know how to make our track bar. So it looks like 39 inches. Yeah. 39 inches center to center. So now that we know our track bar is literally over 10 inches longer than a stock length track bar, I want to go ahead and just take the difference out of this, which this is about where I want my heim to sit, and looks like it's 3¼ inches. So I just need to take 6.5 inches out of the total length, and we can cut this down. All right, so it's time to weld this thing up. One of the tricks, if you don't have a ground clamp that fits over where it can just slide smooth, you can do this, set it on here, run your ground clamp on this, and let it ride. I do that with drive shaft stuff a lot of times. Let's go ahead and burn this thing together. If you watched the long arm video, same concept applies to here. You want to get a good interior pass and then a good exterior pass. That way you got 2 good passes on here. You know, knock on wood, I've never had a Welding bung break out running a dual pass weld on it. There's one. There we go. You guys like my paint booth? All right, well that's drying. I think I'm gonna go ahead and put this drive shaft in. I also ordered this toolbox off of eBay. It's missing the bar latch, so you have to have somebody on each side to open it up. So I messaged them, hopefully they'll send me that bar. I responded with, are you gonna send me the bar? Because it's useless without it. I can make one, but you know, when you buy something, you expect it to be complete. I said, or do you want it sent back and I'll buy one from like the hardware store? And they just said, okay. So I don't know if that means, okay, we're sending you that, or okay, send it back. Either way, it just fits, so I don't have to modify this rack here. It literally just fits inside there. So it's gonna be nice. I should probably put this drive shaft in. It's all 1350, so I gotta change the yokes out. Yeah, that's what we're gonna do. Yeah, 1 and 5/16. I knew that too. I don't know why I didn't have that. Big boy. All right. Now then, this guy, which is that little rubber O-ring in there. we go. Poor thing. All right. $13.50 beef right there. Tell you what, boy. One of the things I want to show you guys real quick is actually really important. If you guys are familiar with standard yokes, you see that there's just this little tit here, and that's what keeps your cap from coming out, right? So your cap on your U-joint here, all that holds it in from expanding is just this little tiny piece of metal. Now I've actually broke these before. I broke one on the Rubicon, and that made for a really crummy night. Adam's drive shaft actually forges their own yokes, and what they have is a fully encapsulated cap. Instead of just having this one lip here, they ran it all the way across the entire yoke. So like I've said many times before, there's a reason that I run with certain companies, and Adam's drive shaft is one of them. They're pro off-road, they make their own parts, and they're always striving to do better stuff and make better things, just like these pinion yokes. And don't forget that I got you guys a 10% discount. All you gotta use is the code Colt Builds It. You can get 10% off of a quality drive shaft. There we go.
That ain't going nowhere, brother.
See how our track bar's doing. Dry enough. Now if you guys watched me do the long arms, I showed you this trick for them, but you want to still do this for your track bar especially. And number one, that's anti-seize. I got a bunch of anti-seize in there. Secondly, spray some penetrating oil of any kind. I use WD-40, but you can use whatever. This is not sponsored, again. Spray it down in this tube, and what that's gonna do is that's gonna keep it from rusting up and getting hard on you. So if you end up changing your lift height and you have to adjust your track bar, you'll be able to do that and your control arms without fighting them. If you ever tried to break apart a tie rod end or anything like that, it's the same way. That is gonna make for a happy Colt. Perfect. All right, we got our 39 inches, center to center. Pretty close anyway. Let's go ahead and put it in. Ugh. Da-da. And we now have a track bar and a dead light. We got it at ride height. We got the axle centered to the body. Now we got to build the rest of this suspension, which is going to need coilover towers, right? So the first thing I got to do is remove our air filter box. We're going to have to unbolt our fuse panel box and my coolant overflow and see how much room we have there. But that's at least where we got to start, because that is in the way of where these towers are going to be. All 10 millimeter there. Air filter box should just be these goofy things. Ooh, got one hidden under there. Ugh, there we go. Ooh, echo. It's stuck in there. Say that's seen better days. Just a little bit of sand and dirt. Arizona dust, maybe. Ooh. All right, so Shanna's gonna take the air box off. I'm gonna change out lights here with our other Harbor Freight lights. These come in pretty handy. I'm not 100% sure what we're gonna do for our air system yet, so you wanna be careful with that. Do you know what you're doing?
Nope. Yes.
Okay. You got it. It should come up now. There we go. All right. You take that box out. I think it's 13 millimeter if I remember right, but that's memory, not looking at it. Oh yay yay. I'm gonna get a rag and put it in that throttle body. She could have grabbed 3/8 drive stuff, but she grabbed 1/4 inch drive stuff because she likes to have things the size of her hands.
Tiny hands need tiny tools.
Like Fisher Price, my first wrench set. That's what she's all about right now.
Done.
And it should. Just gotta come out of that. So I gotta pick up here. Ugh. Oh, come on. There it goes. Ugh. Yeah. Got it. Vern, you want your dust back? We need to clear out the other side so we can do the same thing. This is gonna be like all 10 millimeter, looks like. 10 here at least anyway. I'm gonna go hunt down some tools.
Had to take my gloves off because I don't like not being able to feel. So dirty hands it is. All right. Bottle is removed. All right, now we have to disconnect this, which goes to the battery. So that's what we're doing next.
Can't forget to hook that back up when we need it later.
Okay.
Things won't start. AC line's not helping us.
No.
Okay, let's hope. Cut wires down here, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm. Found some loose nuts and stuff too.
Just rogue,
Yeah.
just hanging out down
Yeah,
there.
they're just chilling.
Just a heat shrink.
Mm-hmm. That's where the nuts were. What were you doing, Vern?
This vehicle's a lot older than
I know, I'm
Vern's ownership. Who knows? Who knows who was doing what in here? All right, so the next thing we got to do here is make our shock towers. Now, Barnes has these nice shock towers for coilovers, but I do have to weld the top shock brackets on. So I just keep my helmet up. I just got to line this up. I got a bolt through it and then a sleeve, a temporary sleeve to kind of keep it spaced apart. We weld it in. Okay, so some of you guys may be wondering, why did I just cut these shock towers down? I haven't even welded them on. Well, I know exactly what height I need, which is 12 inches from the top to the center for the ride height that I have with my spring over. The 12 inches goes from the bottom of the frame to where the top of my shock is at ride height. I want 5 inches of up travel and 7 inches of down travel. Now, I gave myself a little bit of play considering I might get 6 and 6, which is fine, but I took the shock stroke length right here. So we have 12 inches of stroke, 31 inches of total length, 19 inches collapsed. That way I know exactly what I need for where it's gonna be. The nice thing about measuring that ahead of time is now I'm not even pretending to guess my height. So when I go to set this up, the bottom of this frame, 12 inches up is where that shock needs to be. So I need to get this much cut out of that area to get that shock tower up there, if that makes sense. I think it does. We'll get that set in there. Now it's time to cut some stuff. All right, so the one thing I know I don't need is any of this little hump here, because that section is completely empty. There was nothing on this side and there was nothing in there on the other side as well. So this part I don't want anyway, plus that's where the shock's gonna move in and out. If it needs any play or whatever, I don't wanna mess it. So we're definitely gonna cut this part out. What I am gonna do though, is I'm gonna go ahead and measure this way and this way around the height of where I'm at to kind of get an idea of what I need to cut.
There you go.
One down.
Kind of smells like a barbecue and fireworks. We're celebrating the 4th of July early.
Nose is going crazy with all this dust, but look at all that. I got this one, I got it marked because I do want to notch out this little section for this bolt because these bolts are part of the motor mount, so I don't want to delete that bolt. So what I'm gonna do is just notch out part of the arm, but not overly worried about it because if I ever do have to take the bolt out for some weird reason, I'll cut the entire tower out, but at that point I'll figure out what I'm gonna do. I don't think I'll ever need to. I also marked some holes that I wanna drill out of here so that I have more points to weld to our frame stiffeners. But you can see here, that's ish where our shock tower will sit. So we'll have about that height. One of the many reasons I went with a 12-inch coilover over like a 14 or a 16, most people that buy those big coilovers, 14s, show me most Jeeps with 14-inch coilovers that don't have them limit strapped or limited on bump. Like that happens a lot. 12 inches is usually the max of what you're gonna get out of any Jeep. You get into buggy land, you step up into those 14s and 16s and stuff, but it's so much work to make drive shafts and links and everything else clear and mechanical steering that you're not really gonna use more than 12. So that's why I went with 12, on top of the fact that you can see that tower isn't gonna come blaring out of the hood. I'm not trying to make this thing look like a mud dragger. But I need to cut this side. I don't wanna cut this side yet because it's nighttime. And well, my nose is full of all that, so I think next one I'm gonna cut, I'm gonna wear my mask. But it's dark, I'm gonna take a shower, go to bed. We'll see you guys in the morning just like that. And we're back. New day, refreshed, clean pants, feel happy. Gonna start on this side, so we gotta make some cuts. And I don't want to accidentally cut into my AC line or power lines or anything else if I can prevent it. So I figured I should stop here and let you guys know what's going on. So right now, I have notched out the hole, like I said, for the bolt that goes to the motor mount. This is the driver's side. I also have this bracket. I took the bottom piece we cut off because it's tapered, and I made a driver and a passenger side. Now why these are like this is because this one will obviously sit like so, and this one will sit like so. Now the point of these plates and why I left this part open is because this is where I'm gonna have to run a tube going across the engine bay or something. I'm gonna have to make something that supports these coilovers from one side to the other to keep them from being able to rock, because we are gonna weld it to the unibody, but unibody. So what I did here is I made 2 imitation shocks at ride height. This is basically what I want. I want 5 inches up travel, 7 inches of down travel. So I have 24-inch shock loop to loop here, hole to hole. And that's how we're gonna set this thing up so I know what my ride height is. I have my 24-inch bar in here, and what I did, it's kind of hard to tell here, but this is actually the base of the shock mount. So I cut it right here where this plate comes down, so it's at the same place front and back on both sides. So I know I have a good point of contact to weld right here, and that's how I'm gonna set this up. And then I push this bar against the top of the shock tower and against the back side of the axle so it's trued up, and now we can actually start welding it in. Now the other side needs about just like a 1/4 inch to get it on it, which makes sense realistically. I mean, this body could be sitting a little bit goofy or whatever, but I wanna make sure that my stuff is at the same height on both sides. So we got this one tacked in. Actually, I got it welded in. I shouldn't say it's tacked in, it's welded in. Measured from here to the factory bolt, it's 16 1/4. And measured from here down in line with this hole and also measured going up. So now we are set on that one. Now what I did here is I just made this one fit to that one because you can see the arms straight. I also took my angle finder and put it on the sides of these to make sure they're straight this way and this way. Measured the same thing, the base of this to the center of that. We now have 16.25. I had to modify this corner out here from our track bar to make that fit. But everything now is where it's supposed to be, but this was a lot of measuring, a lot of cutting, a lot of in and out, in and out, in and out, in and out. And I just saved you a bunch of that just to show you exactly what I have. But now we're ready to weld this in. So, yay. With the shock towers in, now I want to go ahead and build my support. So I'm going to cut out a couple pieces of plate that come up at this height. Then we're going to come across and hook to the other side. That way this thing can't Ricky Rocky. Don't rock the boat. So I designed a couple plates. We'll see how they work. All right, so I made a few 90-degree gussets. Those are gonna go on the sides of this thing down at the frame. These are my plate towers. So I made 4 of the exact same ones. I kind of just have this just sitting there, and these are gonna sit just like that. So I'm gonna do 1, 2, 1, 2. I'll be able to unbolt it if I absolutely have to. That way we got the support. All right, so we got our brackets in that are gonna go in for our shock tower support. Now we gotta make our top piece. So I took some measurements here, I took some measurements here, I took some measurements here, took some measurements here and here, made sure everything's trued up. Now it's time to make some more pieces. All right, there's my goofy drawing. They're gonna cut this out of the old diamond plate, you know, the flannel of fabrication steel. All right, with much grinding, much cutting, much measuring, much making, that tool has came in crazy handy. If you guys want anything from Eastwood, don't forget code is the only one that's kind of different. Instead of Colt builds it, it's Colt builds 10, but you get 10% off anything Eastwood's got. Anyway, here's kind of what we got going on here. So you can see we have our bracket that bolts in on both sides of the tower. We have our upright. I still got to plate the back side, but I'll do that outside of the, I'll do that once I pull this out. We have our crossbar, and because I had to trim it, because I want to be able to close the hood. So this is really, 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 really close. Don't know if it's gonna fit or not. We do have it at least tacked in. That's why I put this piece of cold roll here, to kind of give it some structure. And the second I got it tacked to this, like, it's pretty stout. These are all just tack welds now, like nothing's moving. So I'm gonna go ahead and unbolt these towers, pull it out, weld everything together, get our back plate in. Hopefully that'll be our trick. Also, while I was waiting for this to cool, I went ahead and installed the throttle body spacer that I got for this thing right there, and raised this up. Had to cut this out. This is a kick down cable section for automatics, which I don't have, so not worried about that. Manual life. Should come out now. All right, look at that. Now we can make it awesome.
It's on fire.
So while that thing cools off, I'm coming in here and fine tuning all these in there. Hopefully I can get into this one, because that one's gonna be fun. Just trying to get as much stuff welded to the body as possible. All right, just to guarantee that this thing's never gonna move, went ahead and added some gussets here. There, 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 there. Yeah, this thing's got some bracing. So Went ahead and painted the inside, and I have the crossbar painted right now, so should be able to go bolt it on. All right, shock tower is bolted in, all the support on the support. I might even weld something here and do a bar from here up too, just to add even more. But we have that on. We got some paint in there, super, super wet, as you can see by my hands. Ooh, the little icon lights are bright, huh? Well, we're gonna have to cut spacers, but I think it's time to mount some coilovers. Finally.
Yay!
Pretty high.
Do you know the difference between black-eyed peas and chickpeas? Black-eyed peas sing us a song.
I thought you were gonna say black-eyed peas are bad at blocking.
That would be good. Chickpeas only hummus. Get it? Chickpeas make hummus. Black-eyed peas are a band. You're welcome.
All right, so here's my 12-inch coilover. I'm gonna go over a few quick things for you so you guys can understand how they work. So a coilover is still a nitrogen charged shock with a lower and upper coil. Your lower coil is usually a lot larger than your upper coil. What I mean by that is not larger in size, but heavier duty. So this is a 350 lower coil, where this upper coil is a 200. Now, right here is your slider, and sometimes when you hear coilovers get loud, it's because you need to spray some WD-40 or something inside of there. This right here is your jam nuts to stop this slider from coming up. So right now, when you compress, you're running on this 200-pound spring. Basically, it's going to compress this spring first. So as it pushes against this spring, this is where your softer ride is going to come from. The second that this hits here, where you want this to start slowing down your shock, is where you want these jam nuts to sit here. That's going to put all the pressure on this 350-pound spring. At that point, that's what you're going to be compressing. That's why I like coilovers more than any other shock when it comes to like custom applications like race trucks and things like that. Now, if you need to change your coils, it's really simple. You just slide this up. These are keyed. They can just slide out like that. And then you can pull your coil out of your shock, change your coils out, and then up here, those are what you set your ride height. So you want to make sure that at full droop, those still have tension on them so your coil doesn't get sloppy, but you also are going to set your ride height there. So if you need to bring it up an inch or down an inch, that's where you do it. And then all that second nut is just the jam nut that locks it on both of these situations. And a good coilover also has a spherical joint in here. So what happens is we have these high misalignment washers here that sit inside, get in there, like that. And that's gonna allow play in any direction like that. Now I know we've talked about this before. Your extra oil is going to go into your remote reservoir. That's also going to allow it to be cooler, so the shock's actually going to run cooler. One of the number one reasons why I love coilovers over like air shocks, even though I have air shocks on one of my buggies, at coilovers, if you were to blow out a shock seal, let's say you blow the shock out, as long as it's still holding the coils, you're still going to be able to hold the weight. You're not going to have the same dampening, but you're still going to have the compression of the coil pushing down, meaning you can still limp it out of there. So now that we went over the basics of that, I need to take this measurement here and see how it compares to my measurements at the top and lower brackets that I made. So I have about 1.5 inches of space there. The upper barns towers are right at 1.5 inches, so that's gonna be perfect. The lowers, because I made those custom, those are 2 inch, which means I need to add 1/4 inch to each side. So I can either do 3 washers, which is really hard to do when you're shoving them in there and getting the bolt in. The first set's easy, it's the second set on the other side. Trust me, I've been through it. So I think what I'm gonna do is I picked up some Schedule 40 1/2 inch pipe, and I'm just gonna go ahead and cut them in 1/4 inch lengths. I am tired. There's a lot of fabrication. Moment of truth. Go ahead. Let it down, let's see what happens here. Looking pretty close. Right there, stop. That's our ride height. All right. I just saw it come loose off of here. See? Didn't even really mess with it. So that is the height of where the tires will be, but I was waiting on some studs. We have suspension. Oh man. Only took forever. Most of it was measuring, a lot of it was fabricating, and then some welding. It's in, still got lots to do, got steering, got spindles, got brakes, bumper, winch, and a bunch of other things. But we're gonna be at Easter Jeep Safari. We're also gonna be at the vendor show for Thursday and Friday, so if you're in Moab during Easter Jeep, come by, say hi, check out the Comanche. Appreciate you watching. See you next time.
Make sure you like and subscribe. Thank you guys.
Click that little bell too. Write a comment, helps us out. Appreciate it. Thanks.